What's going on, guys? It's Mike for SimRacing 604, and some of you may have watched my McLaren P1 tribute video recently. I love everything about the McLaren P1. It's really become one of my favorite all-time vehicles, and while I was recording that video, I noticed something about the McLaren P1. Of course it's fast, but it's where it's fast that really intrigued me. So 0 to 60 is sub 3 seconds, which is spectacular, of course, but doesn't necessarily stand out versus many other cars nowadays. And then it goes from 100k to 150k in the blink of an eye. But what I noticed was from 150k to 250 kilometers an hour, this thing just is mind-blowingly fast, and even beyond 250k, it still just keeps gaining and gaining, and it seems like it'll never stop accelerating. The thing is absolutely incredible. So I went in and I decided to test that out, just test how fast it is, basically from 150 kilometers an hour on, and see how that stacks up against a lot of other hypercars and even race cars. And so I took to the drag strip, the 2-kilometer official Kunos drag strip. Yes, Assetto Corsa has a drag racing function. Nobody ever uses it. I can't find much posted about it since about 2014 when it was first launched. But it's a very interesting thing and a great way to test out the McLaren P1's insane acceleration through the mid-range and upper range. So I wanted to test it out, so I took it to the drag strip with a whole bunch of other race cars and hypercars, and I think you might find these results interesting. So let's go ahead and get on track with our first car. And just a couple of quick technical notes here, guys, before we get on track. I've chosen the 2-kilometer sprint here in Assetto Corsa. The conditions are set to ideal, AI is set to 100%, and to sort of reference the physics, McLaren lists the P1 0 to 60 time at 2.8 seconds. I was able to run consistent 2.9s, and the quarter mile sprint is rated at 9.8 seconds according to McLaren. I was doing 9.9, so for all intents and purposes, this thing is spot on to its real world counterpart, and let's go ahead and get it racing. So the first opponent is this Nissan GTR Nismo. The GTR has sort of become the everyman supercar. You can find them for comfortably under $100,000, and it still has incredible straight line performance. 0 to 60 time is in the 3-second range, and seems like a good place to start with these drag races. Let's see what happens. So obviously with the GTR there's a huge disparity in straight line performance there, but you're talking about a car that costs 10% as much as the P1, so perhaps an unfair fight, but this one obviously more of a fair fight. This is La Ferrari. It was the second of 3 of the major hypercars from back in the day. Let's see how it fares. So amazingly, not even hypercars are safe from the P1 speed. But I mentioned there was a trifecta of hypercars back in the day, and this is the third. This is the Porsche 918. It's all-wheel drive to help it get off the line better. Let's see what happens when these two go head-to-head. So obviously a lot closer with the 918, but still the P1 emerged victorious. But I started thinking about the LaFerrari and the 2-second difference, and it occurred to me that the P1 was a track day car that was fitted to the road, whereas LaFerrari was a road car that just happened to have excellent track performance, so maybe it's not a fair fight. Thankfully, we have a track day edition of LaFerrari in the FXX K, and so this is the next battle, and this one is pretty exciting. So I wanted to, instead of doing a lot of cuts, I wanted to just show you the raw footage from the race, and it has a pretty exciting result. Check it out. So that was not a typo, that was a perfect tie between the P1 and the FXX K. Pretty exciting race, and now it's time to really step things up. We're going to get into race cars. So the first race car to take on the P1 will be this beautiful Mercedes-Benz C9. Obviously a Group C race car built for top speeds down the Mulsanne Straight, and seems like a worthy opponent for the P1. And just a little bit of perspective at this point, we are pitting a Group C race car against a car that you could literally log on to Auto Trader and buy today if you had the funds. That's pretty crazy. Let's see how this works out. So yes, in a 2-kilometer dead sprint, the McLaren P1 is faster than a Group C car. That is insane, but you might be saying to yourself, well, that car is 30 years old. Fair enough, so let's put it up against another Le Mans car, this one from much more recently, in fact from almost the exact same year as the P1. This is the Audi R18. So again, I go back to the way the P1 pulls from 150 kilometers an hour and up. The R18 had it for at least the first half of the race, and then that just non-stop, never-ending power from the P1 just took over and won the race. And I'll state now that, of course, I have no illusions that the R18 would lose to the P1 in any sort of race event. Of course, you're talking about a road car versus a race car. This is strictly an exercise to showcase the just madness that is the P1's pulling power in the mid and upper range. So, of course, all roads lead to F1 eventually. This is the 2021 edition. This one is by Race Sim Studio. So how will a McLaren P1 fare against a Formula 1 car from the probably 2023 season? Let's find out. So by the narrowest of margins, the McLaren P1 edges out a 2021 Formula 1 car in a 2-kilometer dead sprint. That is insane to think about, but of course there's always a final boss. And in this case, that final boss is Lewis Hamilton. The car is the 2020 Formula Hybrid based on the current year Formula 1 car. It is the fastest car ever to compete in a racing series. Let's see what happens in this final sprint race. Well, there you have it. Pretty interesting if you ask me. So we went through all those different tests and it was surprising what it could beat. It's amazing that this thing is faster than some of those cars. But I think what's also amazing is at the end of it is that it's only a half-second slow over a 2-kilometer dead sprint than a current generation Formula 1 car. That is amazing. This is something you can literally go on Auto Trader right now and buy if you have $2 million lying around. But it is something you can just buy and drive on the road, and it's almost as fast over 2 kilometers as an F1 car. That blows my mind. So I hope you guys found this as entertaining as I did. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.